Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars is low-key one of my favorite GTA games. What it lacks in presentation, it makes up for tenfold in its unique utilization of its hardware. I said as much in my initial review of GTA Chinatown Wars a while back. Of course, some people didn't watch the requisite 2 minutes to understand that when I refer to the game as the greatest failure of Rockstar games, it's a double entendre. What I'm saying is it was a relative flop, but also a fantastic game, so it was their greatest failure. As in, it was the best game they ever made that was also a failure. But anyways, at some point I threatened to rank all the missions in GTA Chinatown Wars, just like I've done so for several other GTA games, so no more wasting time. This is every mission in Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars ranked from worst to best. As usual, each mission is ranked based entirely on the subjective amount of fun that I had while playing the mission, so feel free to disagree, just don't be a dick about it. Also, keep in mind, as with most GTA games, Chinatown Wars is best as a full experience, not necessarily when broken down into its individual components. So just because I'm negative on certain missions, that doesn't mean I'm negative on the game. Let's go. My decision to include unique encounters on this list may confuse some of you, but I'm always one to make my life more difficult, so here we are. Wilhelm III is, as it sounds, the third mission for the random character Wilhelm. Pretty self-explanatory, but uniquely among Chinatown Wars, this mission is not a mission at all, it's just a cutscene. Basically, Wilhelm is a character characterized by his desire to buy up a bunch of cheap foreclosed real estate from the foreclosure office and then rent them out for extortionate prices. The problem is, in the third mission for him, he's lost everything and has gone bust. So he's standing on the edge of a bridge, and you can probably guess what's about to happen. Funny thing happened here. A car randomly started pushing me during the cutscene, so by the end of the cutscene, I was on the other end of the bridge. The only thing that results from this cutscene is you finding the key to Wilhelm's house, and suddenly now it's another safe house for you. That's it. I have a policy of putting cutscene missions at the bottom because how can I say it's a fun mission if there's literally no gameplay, and this is a cutscene mission, so enough said. Oh dear lord, Selma. I feel like this game does a good job at steering clear away from pure driving missions in the critical path. Unfortunately, it's largely isolated to the unique encounters, and I think the worst of it is probably Selma 1. Mostly because of how excruciatingly annoying Selma is. Even without the voice acting, I can just imagine her really nasally, obnoxious voice drilling into your ears as she rambles on incessantly. Yeah. Really, you only have to drive her back to her place, but for being such an apocalyptically annoying character, this mission drops way lower than it normally would. Since this is a boring driving mission to begin with, it normally wouldn't rank that high, and normally I wouldn't let story context affect my ranking, but she's such an excruciating character that I can't place this mission anywhere but this low. Parking Pickle is the first mission in the game exclusive to the PSP. Melanie Mallard is a journalist who wants to create a documentary about the drug trade and wants to have it star Chan and Huang. But the first thing you need to do is get her truck from a shipping container in the shipping yard. Unfortunately, there's no real action to this mission outside of one security guard and a couple of people depending on if you pick the wrong shipping container, and the actual controls for the crane are very awkward on the PSP, requiring a level of precision that the controls don't have. So this mission is simultaneously boring and finicky, so it's nothing for anyone. You do get a 2-star wanted level at the end, but by that point it's too little too late. Thankfully, this isn't a case like the Scholarship Edition of Bully, where the exclusive missions are the worst missions in the game. This is an outlier. The Offshore Offload is a mission for Xin Yao Ming, where it's officially become apparent that there's a mole within the Triads. As such, some of Sheen's men have been cornered while trying to export some dirty money. Not physically dirty, just acquired in a less than legal fashion, and they're attempting to launder it. So you have to break them out of an armored truck, then you have to get Sheen's men as well as the money to the heliport. Sheen's men have to survive, but his accountant doesn't. You just need to make sure to grab the briefcase full of money. This mission, if I'm being honest, is obnoxious. It's a case where you automatically get a 3-star wanted level as soon as you break out the men from the armored truck. So you have to deal with that, and it's very easy to have your car trashed, and once you're outside of your car, Sheen's men have terrible AI, like jumping in front of traffic level AI. So they're very easy to get killed, so I failed this mission on multiple occasions purely through their bad AI and nothing else. So just for being one of the rare obnoxiously hard missions in the game, and being obnoxiously hard for reasons that are completely out of your control, the Offshore Offload gets a thumbs down. The Wheelman is probably the worst of the 3 introductory tutorial missions because in this case, the Wheelman is simply about going around and stealing 3 separate cars for Chan Yao Ming. If I had to guess, this mission is probably meant to introduce the carjacking minigame variations that weren't already introduced, regardless of if you already did them passively. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of the hijacking minigames in the DS version compared to the PSP version, so the quality is slightly different between the 2 versions, but not enough to change the rankings. Ultimately, this is one of those driving for the sake of driving missions that I'm not too fond of, because there's no action between jacking the cars and getting it to the garage, and so the length of this mission is entirely down to just how far the cars are away from the garage. For those of you who are new here, my belief is that in games like this, action is inherently productive in a mission. There's no way to fight without it being for a larger purpose. However, when it comes to driving, it's not inherently productive because driving can simply be the commute to get to the action. And so for a primarily driving-focused mission to be good, the driving needs to have some sort of a larger purpose. Something that there will be no shortage of later on. Meanwhile, in this mission, the driving is purely a commute, and there's a little to no action. So this mission is boring to the point of being subpar. So, Convoy Conflict is after Lester, our mole in the Angels of Death has officially been inducted into the gang, and in this instance, you have to protect a convoy of drug vans, which Lester claims isn't going to be an issue, except it totally is, as the drug vans are ambushed multiple times over the course of the mission. So you have to clear the ambushes before either of the drug vans get destroyed, which is easier said than done because they keep getting in the way of my bullets. I find this mission a bit obnoxious because enemies will spawn in all different directions, behind you, in front of you, and it's nearly impossible to be able to protect the convoy at any given time because of the way you get attacked from multiple different directions. But then again, it's only obnoxious in theory because I don't think I've ever failed this mission. Is something truly obnoxious if you can get through it without failure? I guess that's up to personal interpretation. In my opinion, yes, because I find despite its easiness, I don't really enjoy Convoy Conflict all that much, at all. It's just a finicky mission that I can't wait to finish up every single time. And holy crap, I just realized, Lester looks exactly like a guy I used to work with. It was a guy named John, who claimed to have been a former indie pro wrestler, who then had to retire because he got dropped on his head. And even though I could never find any info about his alleged wrestling career, he certainly seemed like someone who had been dropped on their head multiple times. So the next 2 missions are basically the same thing. Matter of fact, the next several are going to be the same thing, and I'm going to be grouping them from most obnoxious to least obnoxious. In this case, Wilhelm II, that deranged landlord from earlier who wanted to buy up all the cheap foreclosed land is going to another auction to buy up some cheap real estate. This is the second of his missions. The fact that the next 2 missions are basically the exact same thing meant I had to find some way to rank them, so I decided to rank them based on how long it takes you to get from the start of the mission to the auction house, and in this mission it took slightly longer at 2 minutes. Meanwhile, Wilhelm I took 1 minute 40 seconds, and ultimately, since these missions are nothing more than missions where you drive from one side of the city to the other with no goals in the meantime, makes this an incredibly middle-of-the-road mission with nothing particularly interesting, mediocre to the point of being asinine. A couple of those missions I wouldn't have even played had I not been trying to play every single mission in the game. Albeit, Wilhelm II has one of the best exchanges in the game. I don't need a car when I have buddies like you to drive me around. I'm not your buddy. I'm paying big. Like I said, buddy, where are we going? Classic rockstar humor right there. Giorgio II is the second mission by Giorgio, obviously, this Italian hot dog vendor who can only speak in tortured metaphors. After bugging his wife's car, now you simply have to drive him over to his wife, who it turns out is cheating on him from a certain perspective when it's revealed that she's a prostitute. But no divorce necessary because he decides to employ her services himself. So all's well that ends well until I blew up their car. So just another mission where you drive someone to another place, so nothing really particularly interesting here. Marcy II is the follow-up to a previous mission where this woman Marcy was diagnosed with a terminal illness and wasn't given long to live. Turns out it was a false diagnosis and she has a clean bill of health, so now you have to drive her to her lawyer's office because she intends to sue the crap out of all of those doctors for all the mental stress they put her through. So it's just a standard driving mission, just go from one place to another, that's it. Nothing more to it than that, so it has about as neutral a pH level as you can possibly get. Though it does end in a rather humorous way, with Marcy accidentally stepping out into traffic and getting run over. Womp womp. Giorgio I is the first mission from Giorgio where he suspects his wife is cheating on him, so you have to bug her car. The only thing that elevates this slightly above the previous missions is that once you get to your destination, you have to do a small minigame to bug her car, but otherwise, it's a really nothing mission. And speaking of driving missions, step right up, Alonzo. This guy is some guy who just kinda looks funny and you have to drive him to the bus depot. Yet another pure driving mission, and in this case, Alonzo goes up to the bus and thinks it's some sort of dragon and attempts to slay it. So another middle-of-the-road kinda boring mission, but then if you're being spiteful like me, you get to kill a crazy person, so all's well that ends well. Guy 1 is another random encounter in the game where you have to drive this guy named Guy to a pornography store. He wants to star in pornography, but then he wears himself out on the way there. Yet another pure driving mission. I think I'm basically done with these now. There's really very little to differentiate these missions, and there's no interesting way to say the same thing over and over about multiple missions over and over again. So here's to being able to move on. Shadow of Doubt is a mission where Sheen wants you to find the Midtown Gangster safe house, given that despite being allies, they haven't shared that info with Sheen. So he's having you tail the guy with a very gaudy umbrella back to where he's meeting with a confidant. You need to follow him with really haphazard stealth mechanics and then bug the car. Then follow him to the Midtown Gangster's safe house. It's somewhat of a slow-paced mission in the sense that it starts off with a crawling stealth mission, and then you have to follow dots on a map which indicates where the safe house is. And that chunk of the mission is somewhat exciting in the sense that you have to keep your pace up, but once you get there, you don't do anything. It's a good setup mission in that the next couple missions are better, but in a vacuum, it's really dull. Selma II is sort of the diametric opposite of Selma I, where last time you were driving Selma somewhere, this time you have to drive away from her. Selma is convinced that you're her soulmate, so all you need to do is get away from her, and to paraphrase myself, Selma clings to you like the smell of stale sweat clings to a brony. So it can be relatively difficult to get away from her, and during the fact, she is making all these crazy unhinged statements towards you. But if you're any good, you should be able to get away from her in less than 30 seconds, and that's that. I wonder what became of her. I wonder if she fell in love with, like, the pizza delivery guy or something. So Near Yet Sonar is a follow-up to a mission where you had to sink a shipment of Triad goods. Joe, not being aware of the fact that it was you who sunk his boat, has you grab a boat with a pulley and sonar capabilities to go to the bay for the sunken shipments. You have to find 4 crates, but among the various things you can detect, you might find various pieces of junk, or even mines that could potentially blow you up. So you have to stay vigilant, then you also have to be aware of the Coast Guard who may detect you, at which point you may have to make a run for it. Although in one of my playthroughs I got through the whole thing without ever having to go near one of the Coast Guard. I think the locations of the shipment may be randomized. Of course, operating the crane on the back of the boat has a little minigame attached to it, but it's not the most interesting one, just spinning the winch. So there's a bit of novelty to this one for the fact that you're on a boat and have sonar capabilities, meaning you have to triangulate the various bits of wreckage yourself, but I don't know. It's a memorable mission, but not particularly good. It's just boring. Nothing really happens. Pimp His Ride is a mission that I would go as far as to say is somewhat guilty of being yet another mission that's based around driving for the sake of driving. In this case, it's the first mission for Chan Yao Ming, and he wants to prove to his father Sheen that he's capable of being the next Triad boss, so wants to win this big race. But to do so, he needs you to steal this car belonging to this other guy to sabotage it so he can't win. So you need to follow this guy to where he ends up parking his car to where it will later be picked up. You take it back to Chan's body shop, then you smash it up in a couple of mini games, which are once again better in the DS version than the PSP version, then you drive it back. So it's what amounts to 3 long driving sequences with 1 short minigame sequence, so yeah, not the best. Double Trouble is a mission for Lester, that would-be Angel of Death who was hired by Sheen to get inside the gang and investigate whether or not the Triad mole is in their ranks. This is a stunt course mission. You have to get on a motorcycle claiming to be Lester and then prove that you're worth the Angels of Death's time. Not a fan of this mission because the motorcycle controls are incredibly obnoxious and the motorcycle itself is very fast, meaning it's very easy to lose control or just crash into things you couldn't see coming because you're traveling too fast. The mission does come alive a bit when you have to kill some of the members of the Lost, but that only elevates this mission above being kind of wank, and even then it doesn't necessarily escape that distinction. So I don't know, this is a tough one to rank. All I know is I'm not a fan, but hey, you get to blow up the mono globe and have it crash into people, so that's fun. Carpy Dime is obviously a pun on Carpe Diem, the Latin phrase for seize the day. It's a short mission that doesn't really do anything other than introduce one of the new mechanics to the game. In this case, it's about halfway through. It's also a mission you need $5,000 to access, but that shouldn't be any issue. So the point of this mission is that Uncle Kenny thinks that a rich businessman is conspiring to purchase the sword Yu Yan that was stolen at the beginning of the game, specifically from the Spanish lords. So you need to steal one of their drug vans and bring it back to your safe house. This is a pretty nothing burger of a mission. Really, it's just stealing a car and not much else. It's not a bad mission, but it's so unbelievably insubstantial that it can only be so good. I prefer jacking the drug vans in my own free time as opposed to doing it as part of a structured mission. Half Cut is probably the second worst exclusive mission to the PSP version, largely because it's not particularly interesting and a touch irritating. So in Melanie Mallard's quest to make a documentary about the drug trade in Liberty City, you got a bunch of free samples of a new type of drug that makes people raving lunatics. And all you need to do is drive to one place, throw some free samples to a couple of junkies, drive to another place, throw some more free samples out to more junkies, and then drive to like 4 separate spots all over the city to throw more samples to more junkies to get them addicted. All told, it's a lot of driving and not a lot of action. And what little action there is kind of annoying because there's one point where you have to go into an alleyway and give a bunch of free samples out, but it's very easy to get caught up in the alleyway and you have to protect Melanie during this whole ordeal, and unfortunately she can very easily get in the way of your bullets. So this mission is a lot of driving and slightly annoying action. And that's pretty much that. You do get chased by some gang members towards the end, and you do get a wanted level towards the end, but too late for either of them to add any particular fun to the mission, so it ends up being bland as missions go. Under the Gun is a morbidly funny mission in hindsight. So there's this girl Ling, who's the master at arms to Uncle Kenny. And she's in charge of training you in combat, teaching you the ropes of melee and shooting, neither of which will light your taint aflame, but are generally perfectly serviceable for what they are. The morbidly funny part comes when Ling, 3 missions into the game, f***ing dies to some 2-bit no-name gangster. This character featured on so much of the advertising material, which implied that she was positioned in the marketing as a big deal, only to immediately die. So this is either the result of an inside joke or a marketing team that didn't talk to the developers. After this, you just need to shoot a couple of guys, and that's it. Nothing amazing, just a bit meh. Tricks of the Triad is the mission that introduces the drug dealing minigame, which I've previously said is arguably the best unique selling point in the entirety of Chinatown Wars. All you need to do is follow the instructions, going from dealer to dealer doing exactly what they say to do. So it's sort of a nondescript introduction to the unique game mode, but don't let that take away from the actual game mode, because the mode itself is really fun, but it's more fun when you don't have to follow instructions and are doing it at your own pace. So it's a slightly underwhelming introduction to a really great game mode. Tommy 1 is a random character mission for this guy Tommy, obviously. He's some psycho patriot who needs you to get him a gun so he can protect himself. So all you need to do is go to a nearby ammunition van, jack it, and then bring it back to him, which requires you to light it up a bit before the driver will get out. Jacking ammunition vans for free guns is something you can do in the game generally, so this is just taking something you can do normally without any reason and giving it a bit of story context. But at the very least it has a bit of action to it, and it's also a short drive for a short mission, so it's fine, just not amazing. A Rude Awakening is the mission where Xin Yaoming finally slaps Huang upside the head and tells him that Rudy is obviously using his naivete to deal with some personal grudges. I'll explain the context once we get to those missions. So Huang has to find Rudy and take him out for his transgressions. No pun intended, you'll understand in a minute. You have to go to one of 3 different locations, but if I recall correctly, he's always at the same location, but I could be misremembering. And you walk in on him talking to this guy, and shock of all shocks, Rudy is a cross-dresser? What a strange twist. After that, you just kill him. It's a quick and easy mission, elevated slightly by the fact that Rudy really had it coming, and I will admit that I had a smile on my face after taking him out, because he's such a bastard to you. Though I can only rank this mission so high because the driving to action ratio is quite suboptimal, but it's still a fine mission nonetheless. Weapons of Mass Distraction. As far as takes on the phrase weapons of mass destruction, I prefer the 2009 Robin Williams stand-up bit Weapons of Self-Destruction, a great stand-up routine, although it's a shame the political commentary is so outdated. Not because of how old it is, but because that routine came out back when we still had standards for politicians. Sorry, what was I talking about? Right, Weapons of Mass Distraction. Wade Heston, the detective who's helping you solve the mystery of your dad's murder, has you fight the Korean gang, the Wanzu Nadong, in order to distract them while he goes to their clubhouse and plants a bug. So all you need to do is go to 3 separate groups of Koreans, kill them, then escape via a boat. Kind of a mindless mission if nothing else, it's just combat in the most boring way, which I suppose doesn't make this a bad mission, just one of the lesser missions as far as this sort of thing is concerned. The Tail Bagging the Dogs. What the f*** is that name? I guess it's a pun on the term the tail wagging the dog, but the pun makes no sense. Anyways, this is a mission that requires you to get some cocaine before you can start. So in the previous mission, we got a Korean gangster arrested. In this mission, he's been released on probation, so now we need to follow him as he goes from place to place explaining to his underbosses how he got arrested. And of course, we have to kill all the underbosses as we go. Well, it's a tailing mission. I guess that's where the tail and the tail bagging the dogs comes from. And as you guys are well aware, I don't like tailing missions. They're usually slow as hell, and despite only taking a minute or 2, this mission is no different. The pace is a lot slower than a lot of other missions in the game, and what paltry amount of action you get, well, that came out wrong. It's short-lived, so this mission is slightly elevated for the fact that it doesn't take that long, but it's still a mission type I've never been particularly fond of, and this isn't exactly the apex of this mission type. But at the very least, you do get to kill the guy who you're tailing in the end, which always livens up a tailing mission. Yu Yan, and I'm still not entirely convinced I'm actually saying that correctly, is about as standard an introductory mission as you could possibly get. Huang comes to Liberty City after his dad was killed, so he can hand over the sword Yu Yan to his Uncle Kenny, who will then gift it to the leader of the Triads, Sheen, which will ensure Uncle Kenny's position as the next leader. He immediately finds himself being ambushed by local gangs. He gets shot in the head, but somehow survives, then they dump the body. The first bit of interactability you get in this game is the minigame to break the back window of the car you're in to escape. Once again, better in the DS. And from there, interspersed with a few minor cutscenes, you just need to make your way back to Uncle Kenny's shop. I feel like the various minigames to do basic things livens up even the most basic of missions in the game, so even though the most exciting thing you have to do is hotwire a car, that's still more interesting than simply doing nothing but driving somewhere, so this mission is fine. Perfectly fine. Tommy 2 is a follow-up to a previous mission where you had to get this guy Tommy a gun, and now that he has his gun, he's gone off the deep end. And for some reason, this gives you a wanted level, presumably for aiding him in his rampage. So all you need to do is get rid of your wanted level, and that's it. I have a hard time placing this mission because I like the way the game gives you the ability to get rid of your wanted level, but at the same time, I'm not entirely sure if I would consider something like this where you have exactly one goal to attain with no other surrounding context a good mission. But I guess a mission should be judged based entirely on whether or not I had fun, and since I do enjoy getting police cars to crash to get rid of your wanted level, lack of story context aside, I guess I do enjoy this mission, but I can only rank it so high based off its lack of structure or outside context. One shot, one kill is a simple mission, but also one with a bit of a unique hook. So Chan, one of the main mission givers, was arrested, but he's made bail. However, as it turns out, a member of his entourage is an informant for the FIB. So you need to deal with him sniper style. You have to get to a perch, construct the sniper from various components, then you have to scan for him based on a description and take him out. After which you have to lose your wanted level. Say it with me, it's better on DS. Because the minigame to construct the sniper rifle is a lot more interesting when you're having to construct it based on moving around the pieces individually, rather than just doing a series of glorified QuickTime events, so points for the unique setup, not sure if I can necessarily rank it outrageously high just on account of the mundanity of the mission once the task is laid out before you. Because being unique in itself is not necessarily enough to have a high ranking. The Worlds A Stowaway is a mission for Rudy D'Avanzo. You know, the crossdresser. Long story short, this is after the Triads are investigating which of their allies is the FIB mole who's been sabotaging them. Rudy, who cold contacted you, insists it's the Messina crime family, namely this guy Jimmy Capra. He claims to have a digital recording proving members of the Messina crime family are involved with the conspiracy to take down the Triads. So before he gives you a copy of the recording, he has you whack 3 different members of the Messina family who are alleged to have been named on the recording. Once again, we all know he's full of it now, and honestly, he couldn't make it more obvious with his staunch refusal to give Huang what he wants. But in the end, this mission is nothing more than a couple of quick assassinations too insubstantial to really commit to memory. This one's fairly mediocre as a result, kind of not worth remarking on as a result of being insubstantial. Payback is the mission directly after the death of Ling, where you have to deal with the 2-bit gang who killed Ling and is trying to get in on Uncle Kenny's territory. This one's definitely better because while the previous mission introduced the combat, and it really didn't implement it in a very interesting way, this one is the first true combat mission, even if it is only a minute or two, and the preceding chase beforehand makes the eventual fight all the more satisfying for having to build up to it. The only thing that knocks this one down is since it's in the beginning of the game, it's short and is not very complicated. The tow job is the first mission for Wade Heston, and long story short, he believes that the Korean gang loyal to the Triads, the Midtown Gangsters, are responsible for assassinating Huang's father and taking the sword that Huang was sent to deliver. So Wade needs you to try and destabilize the Korean gang by getting one of their members arrested. So you need to steal a car that's currently being towed, then you have to get police attention however you see fit, then you need to park it in front of the police station to incriminate the Korean as opposed to yourself, which is weird. This is a fine mission, probably above average for the game. Getting the flatbed truck to stop is a decent bit of fun, as is the part where you have to get police attention. That little minigame to get the car off the truck is insubstantial both on the DS and the PSP. I don't know, it's a fine enough mission for what it is. Doesn't take too long either, as long as you get a quick wanted level. I'm not crazy about the tow job, but I'm not down on it either. Cherry 1 is one of the better random character missions throughout all of Chinatown Wars because it's quick, action heavy, and actually has something interesting to say. Cherry is a prostitute who decides she wants to take revenge on the world, starting with you. Why? Because she's sick of seeing all her colleagues being killed so people can get their money back. Obviously a satirical dig at what people have been famously doing in GTA for years. So it's interesting in that sense, but once you get down to it, it's just a 30-second combat scenario, which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. Marcy 1 is probably the best mission involving random characters because it's entirely free and open. This is immediately after Marcy is allegedly diagnosed with a terminal illness and just wants to have some fun. So you get into her car and drive like a maniac for a couple minutes however you wish. You can do jumps, driving on the wrong side of the road, handbrake turns, just driving fast, you name it. Then you drop her off at her place. It's a fun little bit of freeform driving with a fun goal and a relatively easy payoff. Not bad. Not bad at all. Natural Burn Killer is a mission where Uncle Kenny's businesses that he's protecting have stopped paying their money. So you need to set an example by burning one of the businesses to the ground. This is yet another mission that introduces one of the more unique aspects of Chinatown Wars, in this case the ability to go to a gas station and fill up a bunch of bottles in order to create makeshift Molotov cocktails. Which is a convenient means of acquiring them, but it's one of those cases where it takes up far too much time to create far too few cocktails. Plus, the minigame is annoying in how the spout changes in unpredictable ways. And so I very rarely ended up doing this as opposed to just buying whatever I could from ammunition or searching through red dumpsters. So I'm not a fan of that, but the second half of this mission where you have to burn a store and then prevent the fire trucks from stopping the fire is a decent chunk of action, and it's pretty fun. My preferred method was just to steal the fire trucks as they pull up. So it's a mission that starts off pretty meh, but then gets good towards the end. Driven to Destruction is probably one of the weaker missions by Zhao, but that doesn't make it a bad mission by any means. After saving a bunch of Jamaican drug dealer cars in a previous mission, our cocky friend sees that the Jamaicans aren't showing him any respect. So it's time to teach them some respect. So we roll into their territory and Zhao stands on the back of the truck you're in and kills the drug dealers until he basically says enough is enough. And you have to do that for 3 separate groups before driving back to Zhao's club. You see, the issue with this one is a lot of the action happens passively via your NPC support character. And while you can help him out in the rampage, you're relegated to using the weapons that you've had going into this mission. Meanwhile, he gets a giant f***off minigun. That is awesome, and I want me some of that. So this is a mission that could have been good if you were required to be more involved in the action, but unfortunately not. Pursuit Farce is the first of only 2 missions that Ling appears in, and despite being the earlier one, I think it's the better one. Mostly because the mission after introduces the shooting combat, which as I said isn't anything super special. Meanwhile, this introduces the most unique mechanic in the game compared to the rest of the series, the wanted level system, and specifically how you deal with the wanted level system by getting cop cars to crash. You have to rescue Ling from a police sting, and after that, you have to get rid of a 2-star wanted level before driving her to Kenny's place. It's a good introduction to one of my favorite parts of the game, and I also really enjoy the banterous back and forth that Ling and Huang have, where Huang is trying to flirt, but he's about as tone deaf as a seat cushion and immediately gets shut down in the most brutal way. Good stuff. See No Evil, the final mission for our boy Lester. Okay, so this one gets a bit confusing because this mission involves two people named Lester. So Lester LaRock, our friend, has gotten involved with this girl named Meredith, who's the girlfriend of Lester Arnold, the leader of the Angels of Death. Lester LaRock got involved with her to try and get answers about whether or not the Fed Rat is among the Angels of Death. But the Angels of Death are naturally very angry at one of their new recruits getting involved with their boss's girlfriend. So you need to protect the two of them while they're off doing their business, so to speak, because the Angels of Death are after them, and Meredith won't give any answers about any sort of Fed Rat if she suspects that the Angels of Death are after them. So basically, you have to protect the two of them while they're being chased, and then protect the apartment building they go into, of which involves about 20 different bikers chasing after them. But hey, small bikes with a fixed explosion size means boom goes the dynamite. Yeah, another mission classified as basically good. You get some good action, some excitement. The unique element of keeping Meredith ignorant to what's going on is pretty fun. There's some good stuff here, and as a final send-off to Lester, it's a perfectly serviceable, if slightly repetitive endpoint. So in Counterfeit Gangster, Chan is out of jail on bail, and the long and the short of it is he has police clamping down on him, and he also has some less than legal goods in his possession. So he needs you to destroy all his counterfeit goods before they're discovered by the police. In two instances, the counterfeit goods are represented by wooden crates you just need to destroy, which are fairly self-explanatory. And in the other two cases, you have one part with a crane that you need to use to drop these cars that are behind a fence into the ocean. Then you have some more cars that need to be pushed into the ocean with a bulldozer. So it's a simple idea with some good variants to it. The crane minigame is a bit boring, but this is also the only time you get to use a bulldozer for its intended purpose. So it all balances out as pretty good. Now, I've heard the term Fandom Menace before, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. Based on osmosis, I think it's the collective noun to refer to incredibly toxic Star Wars prequels fans, or possibly just toxic Star Wars fans. But apparently that was such a good pun that it was also a mission name in GTA Chinatown Wars years before it was coined for anything else. In this case, Zhao needs to meet with a couple of different triads at different locations. Meanwhile, apparently Zhao is also some sort of celebrity, and as such he's being chased down by paparazzi. So while you're driving him around, occasionally paparazzi will try and interject and forcefully take pictures, at which point you have to kill the paparazzo before your friend makes headline news. So this is a largely driving-focused mission, but with enough unique elements with the paparazzi to elevate the concept. And there is some catharsis by proxy being able to kill paparazzi, because it's the second least dignified job in the world. And having to interrupt your driving to chase some undignified photographers is a nice break from the usual action. So this one is above the usual standard driving missions, but probably not the upper tier of missions in GTA Chinatown Wars. Stealing the show is the first mission for Zhao, and structurally speaking is kind of similar to the mission Catalyst in GTA San Andreas. Zhao wants to test you, and so he has you be the thrower on the heist that he's pulling. So you have to get into the back of the truck and throw him 15 crates. Crates of what? I don't think it was ever specified. But for what it's worth, it's a quick and easy mission and utilizes a decent throwing minigame. It's not exceptional, but it's another one of those missions that's as good as it needs to be. Steal the Wheels is thankfully a slightly more interesting name than a lot of other similar missions, like that mission in GTA 3 which is just called Grand Theft Auto. Yeah, as opposed to all the other activities you do in these games. The long and the short of this mission is, you need to steal Jimmy Capper's car for Rudy Alonzo, who claims to have put a digital recording device in the car which will prove that Jimmy is the Fed Rat. But as we know, Rudy is full of it, and he presumably just wants you to steal Jimmy's car to get one over on him. So you roll in, kill a bunch of people, steal the car, and drive it back. There's like a dozen other missions in the game like this, and it's a perfectly fine mission style. It does get a bit repetitive after a while, but it's an enjoyable mission style. Recruitment Drive is surprisingly not the first mission in the GTA series with that name, as there's a mission in Vice City with the same name. In this case, Uncle Kenny's goons are a bunch of cowards, so Kenny wants to replace them with new, more eager goons. So you need to go out and save 3 individual people on the street who are each being abused by a different group of hoodlums. Then you recruit said people to the Triads. Once recruited, you give them a nice tattoo, which also introduces the tattoo minigame, which is a minigame I don't think I ever did, because I'm pretty sure you can suck dicks for dimes and make more money. But for what it's worth, this mission in itself is pretty fun with some nice early game action, where you're able to find your own way of killing 3 separate groups of people while keeping your allies alive. Not bad whatsoever. As far as the tattoo minigame, I find it slightly finicky on the DS. Personally, I actually prefer it on the PSP because you just need to follow a couple of directional inputs, which is much easier and much quicker, to the point where doing the actual minigame for what little money you get isn't much of a chore. Operation Northwood. I think I went by Northwood at one point. Okay, so funny story. Back in high school, we would sometimes play Counter-Strike during lunch in one of the computer labs, and at one point I was on a team of Northwood, Southwood, Eastwood, and Westwood. Why? Well, because the last name of one of our friends who was playing on the other team was, well, one of those names. I won't say which. And so we did that just to bug him. It's funny. The school eventually banned Counter-Strike from being played, but they were okay with Unreal Tournament being played, even though the latter is way more violent. Anyways, as for Operation Northwood, Wade Heston, the detective, is trying to get off the drugs, and as a result, his dealer is threatening to hand in some evidence to the cops, which would cause IAD to come down on him. Very optimistic for thinking a cop would actually get in trouble for that. So basically, you need to permanently deal with the dealer. You have to get a car fitted with a bomb, then you need to find the dealer and trail him all the way back to his warehouse. Then you activate the bomb to get rid of the dealer before the IAD arrives. And that's that. This is the mission that introduces the concept of car bombs, but it's not really used much or is particularly useful generally. The chase is fun on account of the fact that the dealer is incredibly fast and drives like a maniac, so you have to be incredibly perceptive, and one mistake could have you lose him. So as far as missions that are primarily driving based, this is certainly one that stands above a lot of them. And I also think there is some rubber banding here that makes it slightly easier, so you can go from tailing him to being ahead of him in like 5 seconds. The best way to describe this mission is like the introduction to a better mission. If you had this type of mission but where it doesn't end so anticlimactically, it could have easily been a top 10 mission. But the fact that you do this exciting chase and then just blow up the warehouse, things end on a bit of a downer, so it's a good mission that had potential to be better but ultimately falls flat in the end. So in one of the missions I'll cover shortly, the Channel 15 correspondent Natalie Vanet, I think that's how that's pronounced, was killed in the line of duty, which means that Melanie got her spot as leading correspondent. But she also went against her word when she said she wasn't going to expose either of you or Chan for helping her with her documentary. So you need to drive over to the studio, break in, kill any security, kidnap Melanie, destroy all incriminating footage of you and Chan, then drive her over to the shipping yard, at which point you let Chan do whatever he needs to do.
I'm finna kill you.
Yeah, she did. Friend or foe, and not of the boring Spider-Man game variety, is a mission following learning where the Midtown Gangster's safe house is. They have some files in their safe house which will either prove their guilt or innocence, so you need to get a couple of Sheen's men and roll in on the joint. Blow a hole through the side of the building while your allies go in, and you defend the gates. Pretty simple, but effective. It's once again one of those missions that's fairly good for self-explanatory reasons, and I have nothing negative to say. Store Wars. My god, why are there multiple Star Wars puns in this game? First the Fandom Menace and now this. Anyways, in this case, the Spanish lords are planning an attack against some businesses that Kenny is supposed to protect. It's never specified why, presumably it's payback for a previous mission where we stole their drug van. In any case, you have to first barricade the road, then you have to stop the Spanish lords as they roll up, before they have a chance to destroy the store. Combat-wise, it's pretty fun. It's not very often we're tasked with barricading a street, which makes things feel more big time. And there's plenty of combat in this mission to sink your teeth into, including having to deal with multiple people carrying Molotov cocktails. Personally, I'm a fan. It's fairly short though, so it can only place so high, but for those few glorious moments, it's a damn fine mission. Arms Out of Harm's Way. Wouldn't it be better if the title were just Out of Harm's Way? The way it's written seems a bit wordy. In any case, Sheen wants you to stop the Midtown Gangsters' arms deal because he's afraid that they may be stockpiling weapons to use against the Triads. It's funny how Sheen gets mad at Huang for ruining his relationship with the Italian mob, and yet he is having Huang do so much worse things for much pettier reasons. Either way, yet another short combat mission. You have to fight through a team of some well-armed Midtown gangsters as you move your way through the shipping yard, and it's a nice exciting fight for as short as it is. I feel like this game really does have an abundance of combat missions that are merely good, so it's about finding those few missions that really stand out above the rest. Does this one stand out? Not really, even once you're forced on a jet ski to take out the boat that was presumably shipping the weapons. Like, yeah, it drops mines, which adds a bit of flavor, but this part of the mission is over so quick and the rest of the mission is so similar to so many other missions that while Arms Out of Harm's Way is a good mission, it doesn't do anything to stand out among the other good missions. Kenny Strikes Back is the follow-up mission from earlier in the game where we had to track the Spanish lords to their main warehouse where they kept their merchandise. The goal here is to go in and steal one of their vans full of merchandise while also killing everyone in your way. I feel like this is a mission that would have been done better if it had started immediately after we finished the previous mission from right outside the gate. Because you can raid the warehouse anytime you want after this, and all you need to do is start right outside the warehouse. So driving there feels a bit unnecessary in retrospect, and honestly just kind of makes the pace grind to a halt. But you know, a nice meditative drive to the action, I guess that's not always a bad thing. Either way, a healthy dose of action with a unique area, and an intense drive back as you're attempting to get away from the Spanish Lord's wrath. Not bad. Not bad whatsoever. In fact, it's pretty good. The Wages of Sheen is sort of a spiteful mission from Sheen. Despite ransacking the Midtown Gangsters' safe house, preventing them from getting any sort of weapon shipments, then finding out that they were innocent of harboring the Fed rat, Sheen still has you go in and blow up their base of operations out of spite for the fact that they want to be independent. Yeah, I'd want to be independent as well if I was being antagonized like this. Either way, the mission is fairly self-explanatory. You go into their base of operations with a couple of big bombs and annihilate the hell out of the Koreans. Normally, the bomb arming minigame only needs to be done once, and so I've never mentioned it up until now because it's completely pointless in the grand scheme of things, but with that said, this time you have to do it 4 times. So it's less easy to ignore. You have to go to 4 points, repeat the combination of the bomb arming sequence each time, and blow up another chunk of the hideout. All the while fighting all the different gang members along the way. So once again, it's a good combat mission with its only defining feature that makes it stand out being the fact that you make things explode. Which is always fun, but ultimately this is a mission that's good but for rather uninteresting reasons, like many other combat missions. An easy way to make a mission with a better than average score would be letting us play around with something we don't often get to play around with in standard gameplay. In this case, the mission Cash and Burn. A gang called the Irish American Killers have moved in on a bit of territory that was left vacant due to a previous mission. So Huang is tasked with going in with a flamethrower and destroying all their merchandise, as well as killing everyone who gets in your way. And like I said, unique toys are a good way to make a mission fun, and we don't often get to use a flamethrower in this game, at least not unless we choose to. As morbid as this may sound, being able to burn people to death and destroy all the merchandise with fire is a unique bit of spice to elevate the mission, and I'm perfectly okay with this mission when it's all said and done. Not exceptional, but pretty good. Scrambled is one of the final missions for Wade Heston, and long story short, he has a contact within the FIB who has an illegal wiretap, but his wiretap is being hacked. So you need to go around town and find the scramblers that are hacking his wiretap. This is about as self-explanatory as it gets. You have to go to 3 locations, kill a bunch of people, and destroy the machines causing interference. and you can suss out the location based on the level of interference on the interference meter. It's a solid enough combat mission, and I like the twist that the third scrambler is actually a mobile scrambler and you have to constantly chase it down to be able to destroy it. And the organic nature of having to find the scramblers by using the interference meter makes this mission a little bit more interesting than it would have been otherwise. A solid mission, but once again kind of middle of the pack as far as combat missions are concerned. Cen of the Father, and the Cen missions generally, are missions that really hurt me growing up, because aside from having to find 2 lines of foe around the city, you have to connect to the Rockstar Games social club to unlock these missions. Problem is, at least on the DS version, you need to connect to the Rockstar social club using an outdated Wi-Fi connection called a WEP key, so I had one and exactly one playthrough that had the Cen missions. And that save file is long gone, and I couldn't figure out how to change my internet settings back to the WEP settings, so I lost the ability. Plus, my most recent playthroughs of this game were on the DS emulator anyway, and DS emulation is not that sophisticated yet. That said, on the PSP emulator, there are save files you can download which have the Cen missions, which means that you can finally enjoy them, and this one, the second one, is perfectly fine. But it isn't worth the hassle as far as what it takes to unlock. In the previous mission where Cen Shan pulled off a major heist, he killed a couple of police officers but was shot in the process, and he's bleeding out. So you need to get rid of a 4-star wanted level and then drive him to a specific spot implied to be where he can get patched up, but it's actually where his sister died, who was a Ling from the beginning of the game. Turns out all the money he took from the heist is going towards her funeral expenses. He also blames Huang for her death, but he also brings up a good point about how Cen wasn't there for his sister. And then Cen bleeds to death. It's a good mission. Getting rid of the 4-star wanted level is a challenge but not too difficult, and in my case was all over and done with in 3 minutes. A perfectly serviceable mission, and technically it's also the canonical end to Chinatown Wars. You can't unlock these missions until after the final mission, so this is the final resting place of Huang. Watching some kid bleed out in the backseat of a car. Kind of a bit of a whimper if you ask me. Apparently Rockstar Games aren't averse to recycling mission names, since Evidence Dash was the name of a mission in GTA 3 as well. Evidence Dash is one of a couple of missions where you have to save Wade Heston's ass. So the IAD have stolen Wade's car, which is full of a bunch of evidence that will implicate members of Wade's team, so his team is attempting to destroy the car before the IAD has a chance to search it for evidence. But Wade wants to save the car because of reasons that we never truly find out because he's constantly changing his backstory. In this case, it's allegedly the last thing his wife got him before she had an affair with Wade's best friend, but there's no guarantee that that's the legitimate backstory. In any case, you have to get the car before it's destroyed, drive it to a secluded area, burn the evidence, and get back to Wade. All's well that ends well. It's a nice fast-paced mission with a compelling goal. I like the part where you have to find a secluded area to burn the evidence. It reminds me of trying to find a spot to do business dealings with a hooker in various other GTA games. And the chase at the beginning is pretty exciting, having to protect the car from Wade's business associates, unlike, you know, how it usually goes, which is the opposite. And it's deceptively manageable, because while you may think you need to nearly destroy the car to be able to steal it, or do some other difficult maneuver to get the car, it stops on its own and you steal it easy peasy. I don't know, it's yet another mission that's good, but doesn't generally stand out in the sea of other good missions. Sabotage. So given that there's 2 dashes in the mission name, shouldn't it be called Sabotage? Anyways, Sabotage is a mission where Chan wants to celebrate his newly acquired territory, and he decides he wants to race Huang in the new speedboat. This, of course, is set up by Chan to basically be unwinnable for Huang. However, as it turns out, the boat was actually sabotaged, and now Chan is stuck out in the middle of the harbor because he can't swim. And this is when the Spanish lords show up, and you have to protect Chan while he calls for a helicopter to come pick him up. And that's no easy feat, because with jet ski controls being a bit slipperier than car controls, getting to where you need to go at a moment's notice is not an easy feat whatsoever. But that's also part of the challenge, limiting your mobility and making it a bit harder to defend Chan. But it's also one of those missions that seems harder than it actually is, because Chan has plenty of health, and as long as you're actually trying, you should have no problem keeping him from dying with health to spare. So it's definitely different, and it manages to balance out that feeling of being tough while also being fairly reasonable, so it's yet another one to add to the pretty good pile. Copter Carnage is a good two-pronged mission in Chinatown Wars. On account of Huang enraging the Spanish lords, they're now attacking Uncle Kenny's warehouse, so you have to protect all the merchandise from them as they send increasingly more well-equipped men to blow the place up. Then once that's sorted, you have to follow a helicopter back to their place so you can come back later and sort their insolence out. So it's two separate instances of mechanical challenges that I quite enjoy. The first one is a difficult battle, and the second one is chasing the helicopter back to its spot of origin, which isn't the easiest thing to do given the fact that it's traveling in the air and therefore can skip various intersections, so you have to be very vigilant of where and how you're traveling so you don't lose it. Overall, a good, enjoyable mission that mixes things up quite well. By Myriads of Swords is one of those missions with such a specific name that I'm almost certain it's a reference to something. Sheen has found out that there are multiple loose-lipped gang members among his ranks, so he has you deal with them in a way befitting the Triads, a giant sword. The sword in this game is a melee weapon that, to my knowledge, is a one-hit kill every time. It's also a weapon that, in the story anyway, you only get in this mission, and if you have to replace it, I'm not entirely sure how you get a new one. So there's a novelty here. You chase down the lieutenants in two individual segments of gameplay which in themselves could have very well been their own missions. Then you kill the minions around them, grab the ID to prove they're dead. So that part of the mission is fun, varied, and forces you to play the game in a specific way. Then there's the final twist in the end. Despite ostensibly killing the traitors, Sheen believes that you are the traitor. And despite what we will find out later, Uncle Kenny decides to step in and plead for your innocence. And now you have to work doubly hard to try and find the rat. So like I said, two fun halves of the mission makes for a good action-heavy mission, and an interesting twist at the end that raises the stakes pretty significantly. Faster Pusher Man Sells Cell? That's not a mission title, that's a Mad Lib. As a further point of Lester's initiation, you have to sell a bunch of cocaine, but there are rival dealers selling in your turf, so you need to stop them and sell your entire stash before they sell their stash. You can play passively, or you can blow up the cars. It's your choice, whichever is easiest. This is a nice fast-paced mission with a simple goal well implemented, although having to individually click on the cocaine when you're selling it, it's not disruptive or anything, it's just kinda pointless. But still, this is a mission that's tense and the action/pace makes it impossible to be bored. So this is a mission that I enjoy doing every time. Grave Situation, aside from being a slightly eye-rolling pun, is a mission for Rudy Alonzo. It's the first mission, and in this case, he claims to know who the FIB mole is in the Triads, but before he has the chance to tell you, you're ambushed by mafioso working for the aforementioned guy named Jimmy Capra, and it's a very intense, very difficult fight out of the graveyard. It doesn't take that long, and there's no variance, so it's a great mission, but the best missions are the ones that do a bit of everything. Meanwhile, this mission just does one thing really well, putting you in a tight environment with tons of goons and making a really hard fight out of it. Meaning it's really good and really quite gratifying to get through because of how hard it is, but it's not the best mission in the game. Jack and Chan could have easily been about something else, given how Chan is one of the most annoyingly sexual characters in the game. But it's not what you think. Chan has been kidnapped for something that happened in a previous mission. He's being held at the dockyard, protected by heavy guard. And then things go from bad to worse when everything lights on fire, so you have to go to a nearby fire that's already happening, steal the fire engine, and put out Chan's fire before he explodes and improves the national IQ by a couple of points. Then you have to make it back to his garage while dealing with more people who have an axe to grind. This is yet another intense mission on account of the tight timing of everything. The angry gang members chasing after you adds a bit of spice between the rescue and the end of the mission. And I enjoy the short but nonetheless important fire hose control when you're attempting to save Chan. Though say it with me, it's better on the DS than the PSP because of the touchscreen. The PSP controls are slightly awkward for that one. Bomb disposal is about as on the nose as mission names get. This is a mission for Zhao, where it's established that Sheen has lost the respect of some of his dealer partners, and so to properly discipline them, he's gonna blow up their stash cars. However, Zhao wants the stashes that are in those cars. So Huang has to go defuse the bombs and stop any further attempts at blowing up the stash cars. It's a very self-explanatory mission. You have to go to 3 separate cars with armed explosives, do a little mini-game where you have to check the temperature of the wires to find out which ones to cut. Then another bomb van will show up and you have to stop it. All the while you have to kill anyone who's in the way. So it's a solid mission as far as action is concerned, and there's a hard set timer making things a bit tough. So far, Zhao's missions are proving themselves to have a good batting average because this is very solid. A good mission with good action carried by unique gameplay, so what's not to like? Trailblazer is a very simple but very fun mission. You know that cliched GTA mission where you have a bomb in a car and it will explode at the slightest impact? This is the opposite of that. This is a mission where you have to drive a tank full of gas into a gambling den of a rival gang. And as it turns out, the police don't take too kindly to you doing that, so in shooting at you, they puncture the gas tank, and so there's a trail of fire following you as you drive. So you have to be very careful, but also drive very quickly to avoid stopping for any length of time and then blowing up. It's a little bit of spice that adds so much flavor and so much excitement to what would normally be a rather humdrum concept of just driving somewhere and blowing something up. This is one of those missions that basically requires you to turn on the heavy metal station just because it seems so fitting. It's a one-note mission, but it's one of those one-note missions that plays said note so incredibly well, I have no complaints. Street of Rage is easily one of the best missions in the game, and it was so close to being a top 10, except for one flaw. So by this point, it's become clear that the Wanzu gang, which is the Korean gang different to the other Korean gang, are the people who carried out the hit against Hwang. And Wade is on the cusp of exposing who ordered the hit, but the Korean gang caught on to him and he was captured and used as bait. So the resulting fight is a fight through the streets where you have to face off against 2 separate waves of Korean gang members and then fight a Korean underboss with a minigun. He doesn't have much health, but 1 second in the line of fire and you're dead. It's a pretty sick mission for how short it is. I feel like an extra wave or 2 of enemies, and this probably could have been a #1 mission on the list. But despite its fun action, its tense subject matter, and its great ending, it does fall short due to not being long enough. But hey, if the worst thing I can say about a mission is that there's not enough of it, then you've got yourself a hell of a good mission. Flatliner is easily one of the most memorable missions in the game, if nothing else. A person who Zhao is allegedly friends with got off a prison plane and is currently in an ambulance. Zhao wants you to go pick him up and bring him to Zhao's garage. The twist to the mission is, the person in the ambulance has a heart condition and will flatline whenever you get into a car accident. He'll also flatline randomly, necessitating resuscitation, and you also get 3 stars, since he is, a criminal. So rescuing him gets you in some hot water. So it's pretty much impossible to get through the mission without getting into some car wrecks, so you need to frantically switch between driving and tapping the touchscreen to resuscitate him at the drop of a hat. And in that case, it's a very exciting and very tense mission. Granted, it's a bit easy, I've never actually failed, but even still, between the unique minigame, unique setup, and fun police chase, it's a damn solid mission. Okay, so let me be clear here, when I'm judging Slaying with Fire, I'm purely ranking it this high based off the DS version because the throwing controls in the PSP version are really clunky. I vastly prefer playing this mission with the touchscreen controls for throwing. The point of this mission is that Chan is basically wanting to kill his entire entourage because they're a bunch of rats. So he's filled a bunch of beer bottles with gasoline, and now it's time to go buck wild with some Molotov cocktails. And in the great words of the angry video game nerd, burn motherfucker burn. You fly around in a predetermined path, scorching all of Chan's goons, and despite being one note, it's by no means an easy mission. Not only do you have to kill every single person, you also have to do certain things in a time limit, such as when you have to destroy these boats before they have a chance to escape, then you have to kill these people who are attempting to fire rockets at you, and it's all tied up with this exciting helicopter dogfight. It's a difficult mission, surprisingly, and even just trying to gauge the exact trajectory of your throws is more art than science. But it's that challenge, combined with the unique gameplay setup of basing the entire mission around the throwing function, that makes this mission as good as it is. And that's what I kind of love about Chinatown Wars, because with the touchscreen, you're able to integrate so many unique gimmicks and minigames into the game without feeling jarring, because the touchscreen is so ingrained into the game, but there's also no set rules for what the touchscreen has to do. The DS really was a genius bit of design, wasn't it? Missed the boat? Why the question mark? So in this mission, Uncle Kenny is striking a deal with some Italian mobsters for some merchandise, shall we say? So you have to make your way out there to get it. Incidentally, there's a Goodfellas reference in this mission, and I didn't understand that growing up, but now I find it amusing. But once the deal is struck, you have to outrun the Coast Guard. There are several factors to this mission that makes it rank as high as it does. First of all, on the ride over, they specifically program some amusing scripted events. Second of all, the boat you're driving is a pile of shit, and as such, it's constantly shutting down and you have to do a minigame to restart it. And finally, the Coast Guard doesn't immediately give up. You need to outrun them multiple times to be able to get back to the jetty to park your boat. So these factors combined makes for a rather exciting mission where we have to look out for multiple things. Nothing makes you feel more powerless than having your boat shut down halfway through a chase. So missed the boat question mark is definitely up there. And you get some free H at the end, which is always a good thing. Whack the Racers is the mission in the game where I would argue more than any encapsulates what I would consider a good driving mission. That being a mission where you drive with a purpose. The idea here is, this is the big race that Chan has been building to, but he's still not good enough to win on his own. So you have to go through the race, sabotaging the other three racers by constantly intercepting them as they attempt to catch up to Chan. It's a pretty high-octane and tense mission, knowing that just missing once at the wrong time could be the difference maker between Chan winning and Chan losing, and I failed the mission as a result in the past. So it's self-explanatory, but fairly intense on that front, so I would say this is a quality driving mission. Raw Deal is among my favorite missions in the game, and I honestly couldn't tell you why, because it is functionally very similar to a lot of missions. In this case, Chan wants you to drive him to a peace meeting between him and the Spanish lords. Of course, it's an ambush, and you're cornered, a whole bunch of streets are cut off, and you have to escape by whatever means you have available to you. If I were to put a pin in it, there's something so innately compelling about having to fight through the streets while the streets themselves are cut off. It makes you feel trapped in an open environment. Does that make any sense? I don't know, I just think it's cool. And some of these NPCs have powerful weapons you don't get access to until quite a bit later into the story. So, I don't know, being backed into a corner and then having to fight your way out is something I find very compelling, and this is a mission I always look forward to. But I also always forget that this is the mission where Wade shows up and introduces himself. I always expect that to happen later into the game, but then this is one of those games that's always a bit shorter than I remember. Dragon Hall Z. I'm not sure if that's the most clever or least clever name for a mission. Anyways, this is a mission where Zhao and his boys are pulling a heist, but they time the heist so that it's taking place during a major Chinatown festival. So you need to steal a dragon costume from a truck that's driving by. Thankfully, this is quick because the truck is very close. Then you drive to where the heist is, and after a short tutorial, you have to do a bunch of exact actions in order to avoid suspicion so you can get through the festival unabated. And there's very little room for error. Like many missions, this one is heavily reliant on the minigames, and as such I find it more enjoyable on the DS because the game is built with these minigames in mind, and as such adapting them to the PSP's controls feels a bit clunky. But I very much enjoy the mission from that front because it's a very creative section of gameplay that keeps you guessing with all the different motions and precise actions you need to do. It feels like a natural inclusion to the gameplay based on everything that's happened up until now. I find each of the different sudden touchscreen micro games to be enjoyable, so what's not to like? Maybe this is one of those ones that's unique to me, but hey, it's my list. Top 10 time. Clear the Pier is the mission where we finally kill Chan, though spoilers, it's not as good as the mission where we kill Zhao. In this case, Chan is being accused of being the mole for the FIB, and as such, he hunkers down in a warehouse with a bunch of his goons who were still loyal to him, so you need to get into the warehouse and kill anything that moves, except for your support characters, one of which is actually one of the people you recruited back during the Recruitment Drive mission. Nice little throwback. So you have an extended fight outside of the warehouse, an extended fight inside the warehouse, then you find yourself chasing after Chan in his car while he declares his innocence. It is a bit tragic, all things considered, but it's also a fun mission. Incredibly action-heavy, quite difficult, and breaking up the action with a chase in the end puts it above what could have easily been a mindless bit of action. Overall, it's a damn fine mission that I feel is pretty good for self-explanatory reasons. Torpedo Run is a mission for Wade where there's a shipment of illegal goods belonging to Zhao coming in, and you need to sink the shipment before it gets in. Wade doesn't say why he needs you to do this, you just do. But it's mildly ironic that Huang is doing all this business to try and find the mole for the FIB, meanwhile he's working with the police to destroy shipments belonging to his own gang members. Honestly, he's lucky to have gotten out of this game alive. The mission is fairly unique in that it's one of the few boat-based missions in the game, and it's also fairly action-heavy. You have to use torpedoes to sink the boat while avoiding the mines that it drops, which is easier said than done because of how slow the boat turns. And in all honesty, I almost failed this mission, but the Triad boat blew up just before my boat blew up, so I got to walk away scot-free. And also, once you get back to land, you need to deal with a couple of Zhao's men who managed to slip by you. The funny thing about this mission is it almost comes across like what would normally be two separate missions, a boat chase and a car chase, but the fact that you do both one after the other is honestly what makes this mission far more enjoyable. I enjoy varied missions that don't overstay their welcome, and this is about as good of an example of that as you could possibly get. Torpedo Run is pretty up there. Factory Fun is the mission for Melanie Mallard, where she wants to film inside a drug den, so the long and the short of it is, you go into this drug den and shoot up the place until you eventually get to the Baron of the drug operation and also break into his safe. It's several minutes of non-stop action, and uniquely among missions in this game, it's also one that creates a brand new environment for the mission itself. Which makes sense, this is exclusive to the PSP version, as such they had some more resources to work with, but I honestly wish the PSP version would have gone a bit further above and beyond to take advantage of the more powerful hardware. I mean, this is a system that had two entirely 3D open-world GTA games. I'm not asking for them to do a full-tilt 3D remake of the game, but they could have gone further than they did. But either way, Factory Fun is exactly that, it's fun. Going through each room, taking out everyone, protecting Melanie, you get to burn stuff at one point. What's there not to like? Definitely one of the best in the game. I don't care if my phone has new f***ing great features. Stop notifying me of this shit. Y-Find is ostensibly the last mission for Wade Heston. His contact within the FIB has been fingered by Internal Affairs, and as such, the trail of evidence has gone cold as far as finding the Fed rat. Or did it? The file that will let you know who the mole is ostensibly encrypted on the FIB mainframe. So you need to decrypt the file by getting in between 4 separate pairs of transfer points and decrypting the file. However, doing so gets you the attention of the police, so you need to deal with keeping your wanted level down while also staying in a very small surface area to where you can transfer the files. And you know what? It's a fun mission. It's a unique task that results in a compelling challenge, and I actually think the mission is among some of the best for several reasons. It feels like a big deal for a start in the sense that as you go through, the police will send stiffer and stiffer opposition to try and prevent you from hacking into the mainframe, and this results in a wanted level of 3 stars at the apex of the mission, which makes this whole thing feel so consequential. Plus, it's a unique and interesting gimmick to build the mission around. The idea of having to find a point between 2 points, which is an extremely small surface area, all while dealing with cops who are on your ass the whole time. Plus, it feels plainly climactic because it feels like we're paying off the entire plot of the game. Of course, this whole thing is a fake lead, but you don't find that out until it's too late. This is a great mission, and it's a quality payoff for the mission string. Or so you think. Deadly Zine is the first of the 2 Zine missions, and in this case, it's the better of the 2. By quite a bit. If only because it's the one mission in the entire game that utilizes a tank. Zine Shan wants to pull a heist, so he needs you to cause a distraction which will take up the police force's time. So you need to steal a tank, blow some shit up, and then you have to maintain at least a 3-star wanted level until the job is done, at which point you have to get rid of your wanted level and dispose of the tank. Technically, you can jack a tank whenever you want if you know the location, but the pure novelty of having the tank within a story context and getting to massacre everything in your way is nothing short of sublime. It's the simple things in life, and there's a lot of simple pleasure to blowing everything up in your way and getting out before things get repetitive. Deadly Zine is great. Does it rank this high because you get to drive a tank? You bet your sweet bippy it does. In the mission oversight, Rudy D'Avanzo is going for peace talks with Jimmy Capra, however Rudy is determined to put Jimmy down like a dog. And he has Huang go up to a perch and protect Rudy with a sniper rifle. This is a lot like the earlier mission with the sniper rifle, except I find this way more exciting because there's a lot more action. You're not just building a sniper rifle and shooting a guy, you're actually having to shoot a whole bunch of people to protect Rudy. And it's actually tense and interesting. This is one of the best missions in the game that utilizes a gimmick because it utilizes the gimmick to its fullest extent, so you have a mission that's quality in its own right while also standing out from the pack. Oversights is among the best in the game, no doubt about it. Although it is morbidly funny to think that this whole thing was simply down to Rudy being a crossdresser and apparently Jimmy threatening to expose that fact. If Rudy just had more confidence in himself, this wouldn't even be an issue. Documental is a mission exclusive to the PSP version, and it is hectic as hell. Melanie is continuing to film her documentary, and she needs to capture some footage at the dockyard. But then some absolutely hectic combat breaks out. People are rolling in from every angle. There's far too much for you to be able to handle it all as it comes in, and aside from having to protect the shipments, you also have to protect Melanie, who will constantly be attacked. You also need to protect the vans from being stolen. It's an insane mission. In fact, it's among the hardest missions in the game, but it's one that's very rewarding to overcome by the end. It also has a decent length compared to a lot of other missions. It pulls you in multiple directions and gives you multiple things to protect. This is honestly, surprisingly, one of the most unassumingly best missions in the game. Hit from the Tong is the mission where, based on alleged betrayal, you have to kill Zhao. And this is a banger of a mission because it's all action all the time, and it is one hell of a difficult yet exciting mission. You have to roll in on his compound, and Zhao claims he's innocent, but of course we don't believe him. So what comes next is a 6-part mission where you have to take out a bunch of bodyguards on the ground level, break into a freight elevator, and then fight Zhao with a rocket launcher, while he flies a helicopter and is trying to kill you, with extreme prejudice. And you have to repeat these steps 3 times. It's a very unique setup. The boss fight is possibly the best out of any boss fight in the game, and even though he ultimately turns out to be innocent, killing Zhao is something I look forward to every single time. The smug son of a bitch. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, be honest with me. Would it have been too predictable if I'd have put Salt in the Wound as number 1? This is the final mission, and as such, you kind of expect them to put in a little bit of everything, and it does go out of its way to be a satisfying payoff to the entire game. But, you know, I guess there is one better. So it turns out that Wade was wrong, and the evidence fingering the mole within the Triads was wrong, and it turns out it was actually Uncle Kenny. He was the one who organized the hit on Huang at the beginning of the game and stole the sword that Huang was coming to deliver. He was the one who organized everything with the FIB up to and including having Chan and Zhao framed. And honestly, at this point, it couldn't have been anyone else, given that every other character in the story had either had all their loose ends tied up or had died. But of course, multiple other agencies show up on Wade's tail, and while they're all fighting, you make your escape. You have to fight through several combat scenarios just to escape the industrial yard you're in, going through wave after wave of enemies, including this guy with a rocket launcher. You have to watch yourself, and you also have to watch Wade's health. It's an incredible challenge, easily the biggest challenge in the game, but that's what makes it as satisfying as it is. Then you have to chase after Uncle Kenny, you have to chase him down via boat, and as usual, they make sure to add some humorous scripted events going on outside of the mission area. Then you have to chase him down via car while the police and other gangs are on your tail. It's a hell of a final pursuit to tie the game up. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed about, and the thing that knocks this down to number 2, is the game ends on a bit of a damp squib, because once it's all said and done, Sheen gets gravely wounded at the hands of Kenny, who turns out is just a straight up madman. And you have to kill your uncle, but there's really no fight here. He has the same amount of health as everyone else, and I would have really liked this if it were a proper boss fight akin to Zhao. But with that said, I personally decided that this was a case to use the sword on him because it felt somehow poetically synchronous. And that was that. The mission ends with Wade finally making his bust. Sheen is arrested, and Huang has to live with his entire life that he's known ceasing to exist. What an uplifting ending, am I right? So yeah, this mission has a lot going for it, and I feel like it's not perfect. It still has a few weak points, and I wish they could have had a DS touchscreen gimmick here and there just to round things off. But ultimately, this is undeniably one of the most satisfying missions to pull off, and it leaves you feeling rewarded more than pretty much every other mission in the game. But like I said at the top, there is one better. Rat Race to me is the best mission in the game, partially because it corrects a flaw that I found with an earlier mission. Remember the mission Driven to Destruction where Zhao is using a minigun on top of the truck and you're expected to just drive him around? Well, in this case, Uncle Kenny, at least for the first bit of the mission, is driving and you're shooting the minigun, and boy does it make you feel like mommy's big boy. But what's the story here? Well, basically, Xin Yaoming has decided beyond a reasonable doubt that Huang is the FIB mole who's been sabotaging the Triads. So he finally decides that he's ran out of patience and puts a hit out on you and Kenny. However, you have evidence to incriminate Chan and Zhao, so you need to make your way to Sheen's penthouse before it's too late. So like I said, you start out clearing the way for Kenny, and boy does that feel good, and there's also some novelty to it given the lack of time you spend with a minigun in the game. Then there's the second half of the mission. You have to drive a second truck the rest of the way, all while you're being bombarded with Triad members, as well as a helicopter shooting missiles at you that you have to navigate around. You'd think an act of terrorism like this would probably get more police attention, but I guess you'd be wrong. So this is a two-part mission where each half holds up as its own individual mission, but combined makes for one hell of a great mission. Pretty much maxing out what you can do with a game as limited as Chinatown Wars. It's tense, it's exciting, and above all else, it's unique, with each half being unique for its own distinct reasons. And you know what's funny? I was gonna name this as the number 2 mission in the game, with Salt in the Wound as number 1. But you know what? Looking at this mission, my gut is telling me that this is the best mission in the game, and I've decided to listen to my gut. I mean, honestly, it's 1A and 1B for this game because they're both basically perfect for what this game offers, but Rat Race is the one that just edges out Salt in the Wound. And that was every mission in GTA Chinatown Wars ranked from worst to best. Probably a more positive ranking than some in the past, mostly because I feel like Chinatown Wars is more consistently good than a lot of other games like this. Like all games of its type, it's still better as a whole experience compared to if you look at the individual components, but still, this is one of my favorite GTA games. It has its shortcomings, it has its issues, but for pure creativity and uniqueness combined with the gameplay that's fun at a base level, GTA Chinatown Wars definitely ranks up there. But that's all I've got, so I'll just say what I usually say. If you like this video and want to support the channel, you can leave a like, tell me what you think in the comment section, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you're always up to date on what I'm doing. And if you want to support the channel in a more direct fashion, you can pledge to my Patreon for unique perks and rewards such as early access, Discord benefits, and exclusive content along with these fine folks right here. And an extra special thank you to Dick Kickham, Gaw004, Hydra Overlord, FarmCat84, Raph, Ranger X, Sphinx, Weird Webster, and Will Stokes for going above and beyond. Elsewise than that, I've been the King of Snark Style right here on Tactical Bacon Productions, and I will see you next time. Stay crispy, my friends.